Are you happy in your business? Now, I have had my share of emotional ups and downs in my 20 years of being a solo entrepreneur coach. And the patterns I've seen in myself and in my clients is that those downs are usually when I was personally feeling unfulfilled. Sometimes it was because a launch that flopped, and sometimes it was just life and had nothing to do with business. But those ups, oh boy, those are the times when I was feeling my most authentic and completely aligned to my purpose, or when I just felt like I was rocking that work-life balance. I would be thinking I could do this all day long and never feel tired. One of my loves is sharing what works for me and what has been working for my clients to achieve this very feeling, full of passion, happiness, peace, and freedom. So I decided to create a private podcast for coaches. Maybe you just want to develop better communication skills that boosts engagement, leads to better results, and makes you feel like you're actually making a difference in the lives of the people you serve. Then you're invited too. We talk about this and more in the UBU private podcast for coaches. Whether you're a mentor, a parent, or run a client-focused business, coaching skills benefit everyone and anyone who wants to communicate in a way that builds relationships. Fall in love with your life and business again. Click the link in the show notes for your invitation to join us right now. Then come back and enjoy this episode. Nature versus nurture. This is a question I get so often in sessions, and I've addressed it a few times in some podcast interviews. But today I want to share a little bit of a personal experience and revelation about my connection of my personality wellness and my biological makeup, and bring in a more scientific perspective. It's time to stop comparing yourself to others and plug in to what is uniquely you. Welcome to Unbox Your Personality, the podcast for coaches, parents, and mentors like you who understand that your happiness makes you more effective at what you do, bringing out the best in others. I'm Jen Higgins, personality strategist and Enneagram fluff remover. Get laser focused on who you are and who you aren't, so you're free to make the impact you were born to make. And have fun doing it. Your personality is your business. So let's get down to business. So let me start with a disclaimer that I am not a medical health professional, and any information I share today is from my own perception through my experiences and education, and it is not intended as a recommendation for treatment or cure. So please consult your trusted health professional first before making any changes to your wellness plan. So some of you may know that I homeschooled my kids all the way up until high school. Once they got to that, they needed way more educational stimulation than I was able to provide them. They're both STEM students, and while I also consider myself a STEM student, a STEM fan, I just couldn't keep up with them. When I tested them in the 7th and 8th grade, they were scoring at the 10th grade through post-secondary college levels. So I was totally maxing out on my academic influence, I guess. But I'm digressing. But during those 7th and 8th grade years, those last years that I had with my younger, much of our science and health curriculum was focused on studying homeopathy and our body's own ability to heal and restore itself when we take care of it, and when we can recognize the symptoms that sometimes we get desensitized to them, or we're just flat out unaware of our symptoms. But in studying, in me personally, in studying and teaching homeopathy, because I had co-founded a group, it's called Homeo Moms. It's still active. It's dedicated to helping moms take a holistic approach to restoring health in a natural way. And In my studies, what I found is that 10 people can have a headache and need 10 different remedies because it all depends on the person and their circumstances. Now, does that sound familiar? That sounds a little bit about what I teach about personality and your business, right? That your path is unique to you. Now, this is one of the reasons I sought out homeopath Catherine Berg. I wanted to interview her to get her professional opinion about the connection between personality and how she treats her clients. And that is episode 4 if you want to go back and hear my interview with her. And you might also recall in episode 17, I bring up astrology because I was originally going to talk about something else, but I got sidetracked by a quote on my husband's computer screen and I ended up talking about that instead. But I'm finally circling back around and I'm picking up that subject again that I was originally going to talk about. So you might be asking me, Jen, how in the world are you going to connect homeopathy, astrology, and personality? Well, I've got to introduce one more topic and maybe things will start aligning. And that topic is the topic of cell salts. These are also known as tissue salts, mineral salts, or biochemic salts. And what they are there's 12 of them. And they are the inorganic substances, the constituents of your body's cells. And they're basically the building blocks of your cells. It's how we're made up. It's what we're made up of. It's what's left over when our body decays. That's all. It's these 12 substances that are left behind. And because they're inorganic, our bodies can't make them. We can't grow them. And so what that means is we primarily rely on diet and nutrition in order to provide them for our bodies. And when they're in balance, our bodies function in an optimal way. But out of balance, then we start seeing disease begin to surface. And it all starts with discomfort. Okay, now Schussler, Willem, I think it's his name, I don't know, Dr. Schussler, he's from Germany, and he was the first one to create a alternative system of medicine. I think it was called biochemic. That's where the biochemic salts come from. But it's based off of homeopathic remedies of these 12 cell salts, of these essential substances that your body needs. So each of the 12, they focus on a different function of the body, like your nervous system or your skeletal structure, your skin, your hair, a whole bunch of stuff in between. Everything that makes up your body are all affected by these 12 cell salts. Okay, now here comes the part that really blew my mind. So later on in the early 1900s, there was a U.S. physician. His name was Dr. Carey. He collaborated with an astrologer named Inez Perry, and they worked together to connect each of the 12 cell salts with each of the 12 zodiac signs. And it was all based off of the chemical nature of the salts and the positioning of the planets and the constellations, and mind is blown. Now, again, I am not a medical expert nor an astrologer, so I'm sure there might be some gaps in what I'm getting ready to tell you. So if you find this as fascinating as I do, I really encourage you to do some research. Your mind will be blown as well. So there's 12 cell salts, right? And there are 12 zodiac signs for each of the 12 months of the year. Are you seeing a trend here? It's like a 12-month cycle. And your sign is based on your birthday. Are you following me so far? Okay. A human fetus has a gestational period of only about 9 to 10 months. It varies. So for 9 to 10 months while you're being built in the womb, you're being supplied these 12 cell salts directly from your mom through the placenta and umbilical cord. And then you're born, and for the remaining months of that 12-month cycle, you're being supplied the cell salts from an indirect source, indirectly through food, which will always fall short. So Carey and Perry, that rhymes, they suggest that we use up one particular cell salt more than the other. And that one is the one that is associated with your birthday. Now, there are behavioral traits associated with the deficiency of each of the cell salts. And I've not come across a study that kind of links the personalities associated, like your zodiac sign personality, with the deficiency of a cell salt. But what I can do is tell my own story. So I'm an Aries, and an Aries is described as, I'm just going to read this. Aries is a passionate, motivated, and confident leader who builds community with their cheerful disposition and relentless determination. Uncomplicated and direct in their approach, they often get frustrated by exhaustive details and unnecessary nuances. Okay, I just have to pause because that's so scary accurate. But under stress, Aries are natural doubters, so they have to figure things out for themselves. So in other words, Aries uses up a lot of mental energy that can lead to mental fatigue or overstimulation, which affects the nervous system, and it looks a lot like irritability and anxiety and nervous tension, sleeplessness, despondency or depression, hypersensitivity, and emotional overreactions. Yay! Never been so proud to be an Aries. But the cell salt associated with Aries is called potassium phosphate, or the Latin abbreviation is called Cali-Phos. If you are a homeopathy fan, you might recognize that name. This cell salt supports the brain and nerve function. And when I was weaning off of my ADHD medication, this is what I was taking to help me stay focused and not get overstimulated, which always resulted in irritability. Now I only need to take it when I am feeling overstimulated, or I've been recognizing when I'm having insomnia because of racing thoughts. But according to Carey and Perry, I really should be making it more of a priority to make sure that it's in my diet, that I'm choosing foods that are rich in potassium phosphate, because what Dr. Carey explains is that my body naturally demands and depletes it more than the other 11 cell salts. So our bodies are wired to always bring us back to homeostasis. But if we can't produce inorganic substances on our own, how can our bodies cope? How are we supposed to cope with those deficiencies? Well, it comes out in negative behaviors, all those that I just listed that were so lovely. And those can possibly lead to diagnosed disorders, physical disorders, emotional disorders, or mental disorders. So how am I connecting this back to the nature versus nurture aspect of personality? Now, if you've ever been hangry, you'll get this story. Sometimes when I'm hangry, I get a little cuckoo and I snap at people, or things bother me that normally wouldn't bother me. Or depending on your personality, you might retreat. But as soon as I get a little sustenance, boom, I'm back to normal, right? So was that moment of cuckoo-ness, was that my natural personality? Or was my body adapting to my circumstances, which in this case was hunger? And then when I nurtured myself by getting some food, did my personality change? Was I actually going back to normal? Or what was that? When our bodies are deficient in a substance that makes our bodies function normally, and we don't have that, that's stress. And the stress security continuum for your Enneagram type is a very important continuum because it explains and it shows you how you behave differently depending on the level of stress that you're under. So, bottom line, I don't really think that you can separate the two concepts. We have a natural ability to adapt to nurturing or our lack of nurturing. In both of those circumstances, we behave very differently, but they are two sides of the same coin. We need both the organic and inorganic substances in our cells in order to function properly and dynamically according to our circumstances that are constantly changing. Likewise, the Enneagram gives us the roadmap to understanding how our personality functions and how we can be dynamic according to our circumstances. I know this is a kind of a heady episode, and I hope I didn't melt your brains too much, but my main point of it all is that personality is both nature and nurture, and the Enneagram explains both sides of that coin in a very simple way. And how powerful is it to just know that? To know that, okay, we are not Jekyll and Hyde, but it's actually normal. Now, if you've got questions on this, please feel free to reach out on me on Instagram or post it in Unboxing Your Enneagram, the Facebook group. You can get links to both on my links page at powercoachjen.com. This was a very fascinating connection to me, even though it still may be a little underdeveloped, but the more I learn, the more my mind is just blown about how everything is just connected and how powerful it is when we can see that. And when you unbox yourself, you unleash that kind of power. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and reviewing the Unbox Your Personality podcast. To learn more about yourself, go to powercoachjen.com. Find out how you are different so you can make your difference.